I cleaned out her pathetic savings, my mother announced to the entire family at Thanksgiving dinner, her voice pitched with the righteousness of someone who just committed a righteous act. My father actually high-fived her across the turkey, an actual high-five, like she'd just won a football game instead of systematically dismantling the financial framework of our entire family. They were talking about the account I'd opened under my own name with my own social security number that held approximately $240,000 that was absolutely unequivocally not actually my money to spend or save in any traditional sense. Yet the twist came not from my mother's ignorance about the account's true purpose, which would have been impossible to know unless I'd actually told her, which I hadn't, but from the fact that I'd spent the last 3 years establishing operational protocols with federal handlers, and one of those protocols was a specific text message that would activate an investigation the moment someone touched the account without authorization. What would happen when the Treasury Department found out that my mother had just committed wire fraud? My name is Sophia Chen, and I have spent the last 4 years living a double life that I never intended to live. The account started, innocuously enough, during my final year of law school. I was interning at the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Financial Crimes Division, and I'd been assigned to help coordinate a long-term money laundering investigation targeting an organized crime network that had been operating in the Philadelphia area for nearly a decade. The investigation had been going on for 6 years before I got involved, 6 years of surveillance, 6 years of undercover operations, 6 years of building a case that required absolute precision and unimpeachable documentation. The problem was that the money itself, seized cash from various raids and arrests, needed to be held somewhere. Not in federal custody, where it could be challenged as bias or entrapment, but in a private account that could be traced back to a real person, where its movements could be documented, where it could be used as evidence of the suspect's financial behavior patterns. They asked me to open the account. "We need someone with no criminal record, no ties to the subjects of the investigation, and someone who understands the sensitivity of what we're asking," my supervisor, Special Agent Michael Torres, had explained in his office. "The account will be in your name. The money in it will be federal evidence. You'll have limited access, you can't withdraw, you can't transfer, you can only maintain the account. The moment anyone tries to access it without authorization, we'll know." "What about my family?" I'd asked. "Won't this raise questions?" "Tell them it's your savings account," Torres had said. "Tell them it's for emergency fund purposes. Tell them whatever you need to tell them to discourage them from asking too many questions. The point is that this account needs to exist and appear normal while containing the evidence we need for prosecution." I was 24 years old. I was 3 months away from graduating law school. I didn't fully appreciate what I was agreeing to until I'd already signed the documents. The account sat dormant for 2 years. I graduated law school. I passed the bar. I took a position as an assistant federal prosecutor, which was the plan all along. The FBI wanted someone on the inside of the legal system who could handle the case when it reached prosecution. I moved back home to Philadelphia to save money while I paid down my law school debt, and I settled into a life that looked completely normal from the outside. My parents knew about the savings account in the abstract sense. I mentioned it casually when I first opened it, said it was an emergency fund, showed them the passbook once to prove it existed. My mother had been impressed that I was being financially responsible. My father had made a comment about how I was finally learning the value of money. Neither of them had asked about it again, which was exactly what I'd hoped for. The money in the account grew slowly and methodically as the investigation progressed. Seized cash from arrest after arrest. Traceable transactions from money laundering operations. Financial evidence that would form the backbone of the prosecution case. Every deposit was documented. Every movement was logged. The account was, essentially, a federal evidence repository that happened to be in the name of a 26-year-old assistant federal prosecutor. This worked fine for 2 years. Then my mother got sick. It wasn't serious, a thyroid issue that required surgery and several months of recovery. But the surgery wasn't covered completely by my parents' insurance, and the recovery period meant my father couldn't work as many hours at his construction company. Money became tight in the way it becomes tight for middle-class families, not catastrophically, but enough that conversations about finances happened around the dinner table. My mother, recovering from surgery, watching her children, noticed my savings account passbook sitting on my desk during a visit to my apartment. $240,000, she'd said, picking up the passbook before I could stop her. Sophia, why didn't you tell us you had this kind of money? We're struggling, and you're sitting on $250,000. I'd tried to explain that the money wasn't really mine, that it was complicated, that I couldn't access it. My mother had listened politely and then dismissed everything I said. That's what you tell people when you don't want to help, she'd said, not unkindly, but with the certainty of someone who raised 3 children and knew when she was being lied to. If your family needs help, you help. That's what family does. I'd called Special Agent Torres immediately after she left. My mother knows about the account, I'd said, panic tightening my throat. Does she know what it actually is? He'd asked. No, but she thinks the money is mine, and she's upset that I won't use it to help with family finances. Keep it that way, Torres had said. The account is protected. If she tries to access it, the moment she does, we'll know. Nothing will go through. The system is designed to flag any unauthorized access attempts. What if she keeps pushing? I'd asked. Then activate Protocol 7, he'd said, and there was something in his voice that suggested this had been anticipated, that I wasn't the first person in this situation. Send the text. We'll handle it from there. Protocol 7's activation text message was simple: activate Operation Blindside. I'd never thought I'd actually need to use it. I'd assumed my mother would eventually give up, would realize I wasn't going to help with her medical bills, would move on to other sources of frustration and family anxiety. What I hadn't anticipated was Thanksgiving. My entire extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole apparatus of a large Italian-American family from South Philadelphia, gathered at my parents' house for the holiday. Wine was flowing. Football was playing on the television. My mother was in her element, recovered from surgery, back to her commanding presence at the head of the table. And then, between the main course and dessert, she'd announced it to everyone. I went to the bank today, she'd said, her voice cutting through the dinner table conversation like she was delivering news of a scholarship or an engagement. I got access to Sophia's savings account. The one with the money she was hiding from the family. I withdrew $120,000. It's going to cover my medical bills and help keep your father's company afloat. The table went silent. I felt my cousin's eyes on me. I felt my aunt's judgment crystallizing into certainty. Oh, so Sophia had money all along and wouldn't help the family. I felt my father's disappointment, even as he high-fived my mother like she'd just accomplished something heroic. And I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. I excused myself to the bathroom and texted, activate Operation Blindside. Special Agent Torres called me 3 hours later. Your mother, he said, without preamble, withdrew $120,000 from your account approximately 40 minutes ago. The transaction was flagged immediately. The funds have been frozen. The account is now under federal investigation. What happens to her? I asked, and I was asking the question I wasn't sure I wanted the answer to. That depends, Torres said. Is she going to cooperate? Does she understand what she's done? She thinks the money is mine, I said. She thinks she was teaching me a lesson about family responsibility. She committed wire fraud, Torres said flatly. She accessed a federal evidence account without authorization. She withdrew funds that are part of an active investigation. Those are federal crimes, Sophia. Multiple counts. I didn't respond because I was trying to process what I'd just set in motion. We need to come talk to your family, Torres continued. Tonight. We need to explain what that account actually is. We need to explain what your mother did and what the consequences are going to be. Are you ready for that? I was not ready for that. But I said yes anyway. Special Agent Torres and 2 other federal agents arrived at my parents' house at 8:47 p.m. on Thanksgiving night. The scene that unfolded was something I'll never quite process correctly: the confusion, the fear, the way my mother's face cycled through comprehension as Torres explained that she just committed federal crimes. The way my father kept saying I don't understand, like if he said it enough times, it would somehow change the facts. The way my aunts and uncles slowly understood that this wasn't a family drama, it was an actual criminal investigation. Torres explained the situation with the precision of someone who'd done this before. The account was a federal evidence fund. It contained money seized during organized crime investigations. My mother's unauthorized access and withdrawal constituted wire fraud, theft of federal property, and obstruction of justice. The withdrawal had been flagged immediately and the funds frozen. the money would need to be returned. A federal prosecutor would be deciding whether to press charges. My mother, to her credit, didn't cry or make excuses. She just looked at me with a comprehension that was worse than any anger. "You did this on purpose," she said. It wasn't a question. "I activated a federal protocol," I said. "Yes. You turned your own mother into federal agents. You stole from a federal investigation," I said. "I didn't create those rules. I just followed them." The legal process that followed was complicated, painful, and in many ways, anticlimactic. My mother, having no prior criminal record, having been cooperative with federal investigators, having returned the funds, technically, the funds were frozen anyway, so returning them just meant the money went back into the evidence account, was charged with a single count of wire fraud. The U.S. Attorney's Office recommended probation and restitution for legal fees. She took a plea agreement. My father, who technically had been present when my mother made the withdrawal and had, in his ignorance, encouraged it, was not charged. The federal prosecutors understood that he was merely caught in his wife's misconception. My extended family's understanding of what had happened varied. Some family members thought I'd been protecting national security. Others thought I'd been punishing my mother for financial disagreements. A few actually understood what had happened, that I'd been part of an investigation, that my mother had accessed property that wasn't hers, that I'd followed the legal protocol I'd been given. Most of them just thought I was cold. The investigation proceeded without any impact from my mother's unauthorized access. The evidence in the account remained admissible. The prosecution moved forward. By the following spring, 3 members of the organized crime network had been convicted, largely based on the financial evidence that had been held in my account. My mother completed her probation. She performed her community service, teaching financial literacy classes at the local community center, which was perhaps the universe having a sense of irony. She paid her restitution. She went back to her life, but something between us had fundamentally changed. She didn't ask me for financial help anymore. She didn't comment on my bank accounts. She treated me with a polite distance that felt like a punishment, even though I understood intellectually that she was just maintaining boundaries. My father tried, occasionally, to rebuild rapport. He'd ask me to come to Sunday dinners. He'd ask how work was going. But there was an undercurrent of something, disappointment, maybe, or confusion about why I would prioritize my job over my family. I didn't bother trying to explain that I hadn't prioritized my job over my family. I'd simply refused to let my family's ignorance override my professional obligations. Those are different things, but they're hard to explain to people who don't understand how the legal system actually works. Epilogue: 5 years later, I'm still a federal prosecutor, now specializing in white-collar crime. The organized crime investigation that I was part of, that my account was part of, has been closed successfully. The money has long since been distributed back to the government or used as restitution for victims. The account no longer exists. My mother and I have a cordial relationship. We have Sunday dinners occasionally. We exchange holiday cards. We're polite to each other in the way you're polite to people you share history with but have decided not to be close to. My father passed away 2 years ago, a heart attack, completely unrelated to anything that happened with the federal investigation. At the funeral, my mother cried, and I stood next to her, and we didn't talk about Thanksgiving or federal accounts or wire fraud or any of the things that had fractured our relationship. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd handled things differently. If I'd found a way to explain to my mother what the account actually was. If I'd been more direct about the legal consequences of accessing it. If I'd activated Protocol 7 before the withdrawal instead of after. But the truth is that I don't know if any of those alternatives would have worked. My mother was coming from a place of desperation and genuine misunderstanding. She thought she was being responsible. She thought she was teaching her daughter a lesson about family obligation. She couldn't have imagined that her daughter was part of a federal investigation. The law, though, doesn't care about intentions. It cares about actions. And my mother's action, accessing the account, triggered the system that had been designed to prevent exactly that situation. I did my job. I followed protocol. I protected federal evidence. And I damaged my relationship with my mother in ways that I don't think can ever be fully repaired. That's the cost of living a double life. Eventually, the two worlds collide, and nobody emerges from the collision completely unscathed.